Hey there. Thanks for joining us for Tales of Misadventure, a podcast all about business blunders. On this podcast, Nicole Donnelly, founder of DMG Digital, talks to entrepreneurs and learns how they turn their lemons into lemonade. DMG Digital is a content marketing agency focused on helping manufacturers attract new buyers through digital self-serve. Nicole Donnelly is a fourth-generation entrepreneur, a girl mom, and an avid traveler. Now, let's head into a tale of misadventure with your host, Nicole Donnelly.
Welcome to Tales of Misadventure, where amazing entrepreneurs share their stories of failure and how they turn lemons into lemonade. Today, we are joined by Kevin Thompson, the man, the myth, the adventurer extraordinaire. With his incredible wife, Hannah, and their dynamic duo of kiddos, this episode is all about sharing Kevin's own tales of misadventure. From thrilling hunting expeditions to reeling in the big catch, camping under starlit skies, and conquering untamed trails, Kevin's love for the great outdoors knows no bounds. But that's just the beginning. Ever heard of a serial entrepreneur who can juggle pawn shops, trucking companies, and even firearms training facilities? Yep, that's Kevin. And hold on to your hats because he's not just a business whiz. Kevin is a proud U.S. Army veteran who served this country proudly in Iraq from 2003 to 2004. But here's the twist. Before his outdoor conquests and entrepreneurial escapades, Kevin's heart beat to the rhythm of farming and ranching. A dream of being a large animal vet led him on a unique path, working with critters big and small. And guess what? That very journey led him to craft healthier treats for dogs everywhere, birthing the genius that is AK Mountain Dog. Kevin, Hannah, welcome to the show today. I'm so honored to have you. This
Thanks
is
for
going to be
having us.
so fun. How are you guys?
Good. We're enjoying the rain in Alaska.
Enduring the rain.
Enduring the rain. Yeah.
How's your Alaskan summer been?
It's been a cold one. It's not. We
Aw.
haven't got the typical sunny days we usually get. So
Mm.
there are people who are not as happy about the way the summer went. But all in all, it's been a good summer. I love Alaska. It's our home.
Oh, I have never been to Alaska, but my husband lived there for 2 years when he was in high school. His dad was a JAG for the Air Force. They lived in Anchorage, and he loved living in Alaska. Of all the places that he lived, I think it was one of his top 2 favorite places. I mean, he just talked so fondly of all the camping trips he did where he actually camped in ice caves and just so fun. So it's just such a, from what I hear, a remarkable place. And I feel like if you're living in Alaska, you're just like a special type of just rugged individualist. And I think your story really, really tells that story very well, Kevin.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's I tell people it's really hard, especially when you're marketing a brand in Alaska. Half the people want to think I live in an igloo and ride a dog sled to work every day. The other half realize that there's a Costco 45 minutes away. So, so whatever version you want to believe of that, I can show you pictures.
I'm sure it's somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
So, well, my very first question for both of you, and welcome to the show too, Hannah. It's great to have you on.
Thank
This
you.
is so fun. It's actually my first time having a couple on the show, so this is like a very exciting milestone. So this is going to be very unique and cool to hear you guys both talking. But we'll start with you, Hannah. If you could pick any animal that was your spirit animal, that was just like the essence of who you are as a person, personality, what spirit animal would you be and why?
Oh, wow. I'd like to say something elegant like a dolphin, but anybody who's around me knows I'm not. So probably like a draft horse. And just keep pushing forward. Whatever you do, just keep moving forward.
Whatever you do, keep moving forward. Oh, that's really beautiful. I'm a horse too. So you and I think are kindred spirits in that way. I
Yes.
love it. Very cool. What about you, Kevin? If you were a spirit animal, what would your spirit animal be?
Well, I get compared to a Sasquatch the most, but
Or a
um,
bear.
or a bear.
Or a bear.
It's one of those things. I've really just like dogs. I
Oh,
like they're
yeah.
loyal. They get the job done. They do what they need to. They don't care about your politics, your social issues, any of that. They're just out there to have fun and get the job done.
I love that. My girls have been begging, begging, begging us to get a dog. And they're slowly breaking me down. And I think the one thing that is like one of the reasons why I would love to have a dog is because, from what I understand and from my friends tell me, your dog always loves you no matter what. Like they never get mad at you. They're always there. They're so excited when you come home. Like you can always count on them to just always give you the love, right? And so sometimes I think, in life, I'm an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur, and family and juggling all that. It's just the idea of someone being there that's just always just gonna love you no matter what is pretty cool. So well, thank you. The dog and the horse. The dog and the horse. This is amazing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. You have quite the story. Quite the story. So I want to hear a little bit about kind of what led you to AK Mountain Dog. I know you for many, many years ago, you were in the military. But let's start before that. When you were a little boy growing up, Kevin, what was it? I understand you had a dream of being a large animal vet. Tell me a little bit about what that was like as a kid and kind of how that shaped and influenced you and where you are now. What was it that you loved so much? Tell us about your childhood.
I've always liked animals. I was a
Mhm.
collector. It didn't matter if it was a snake, a lizard, a mouse. Like I was bringing everything home.
Uh-huh.
My grandma, after my grandpa passed away, came to live with us, and I scared that poor woman so many times with what was in my pockets. Uh, she wouldn't do she would make me empty my pockets before I came in the house because there was a lizard or a snake or something that I had trapped and that I was sure that I could make my pet. And so
Oh.
going from there to, owning pigs and horses and cows and
Mhm.
the neighbor down the road was a large animal vet. And he always had this cool truck with this canopy on it that he could just roll into a field and fix anything that went wrong. I thought that was a pretty
Mhm.
cool job. And
Yeah.
so I just, growing up around agriculture, you learn to doctor your own animals. You don't always have the money to call the vet. So when the vet's
Mhm.
there, you pay attention because you can save money by doing it yourself the next time.
Mm,
So
mhm.
you grow up in an environment of opportunity, ingenuity, and getting things done.
Yeah, resourcefulness, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
care.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? Where did you grow up in Alaska?
No, so up until my junior year in high school, we lived in Bend, Oregon, and then we
Oh,
moved to
nice.
Fruitland, Idaho, where
Very nice.
that's where and when I left high school, I went off to the military.
Very nice. Let's talk about that. What inspired you to join the military? What was it that led you down that path after high school?
A judge.
A judge? Oh, there.
um, yeah, uh,
Oh.
Judge Pratt in Vale, Idaho.
The organ.
Or sorry, Vale, Oregon. Sorry, Vale, Oregon. I got myself in some trouble because I was a turd as a kid, and my dad. So my grandpa was in the Army Air Corps in World War II. My dad was a
Oh,
Ranger in
wow.
Vietnam.
Mm,
So we have a family history of serving, and we
yeah.
have a family history of all joining the military about the same way too. Um, so
So there's a judge involved in all of these
yes,
stories.
yes, there is. Yeah. So
Way to keep that legacy burning.
hopefully it ties with me.
Yes.
So I got myself in some trouble, and
Mhm.
I was sitting in the courtroom before it kicked off, and the judge walked in and looked over, and he said, "Mr. Thompson, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I got in trouble." And by that time, they kind of knew who I was. And he said, "Okay." And so we had worked out a deal with a prosecutor that I was gonna, get do my community service and all this other stuff. And so that kicked off, and Judge Pratt looked at me and he said, "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to give you a day in jail, and your probation's up when your fines are paid. And I suggest you leave town because the next time I'm going to railroad you." I said,
Wow.
"Okay." And so I walked out, paid my fines, did my day in the county jail, and my dad took me to the recruiter and I signed up.
Man. Wow.
So it's
And
not
you've
over.
probably you've never seen a judge since, right?
Nope, nope, I haven't. In fact, when after I graduated basic training and I went to Iraq, they give you in the unit I was in, they gave you a patch. You get your patches sewn on and all that, and you have an extra patch. And so I mailed it back
Mhm.
to the judge. And so,
Wow.
and it kind of funny. Fast forward when I owned the pawn shop, his wife walked
Mhm.
in because we it was a pawn shop, but it was also an outdoors store, and she was
Uh-huh.
looking to buy a new pheasant shotgun for her husband. And I looked over and I introduced myself, and she kind of looked at me, and she knew who I was. She said, "Kevin, I never would have thought I would walk into a place that you own, and that you're." So yeah.
So the military turned you around.
Yes, yes, the
Yeah.
military taught me discipline, the discipline I needed, and really gave me the ability to direct a lot of my energy in a more positive way.
I love that. Well, I just want to thank you for your service. It is such a gift that we have men like you who are willing to go and serve our country and protect our freedom. And, it's a huge sacrifice that you made to do that. And I thank you for it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to meet veterans like you who are willing to take that risk and put their life on the line for the rest of us back home. So, thank you. Thank you for your service. I'm have no doubt that it was a challenging and very difficult experience. And
That
I'm
is,
sure you could probably speak forever about that.
you know what,
So,
the thing about the military, and
mhm.
that I tell people is, I look back and it was probably one of the fondest and worst memories of my entire life.
Wow. Yeah.
And wrestling with that on the other side is interesting because I still have friends
Mhm.
that we stay in touch. But at the same time, I wouldn't have traded my experiences for the world. It's made me who I am
Mhm.
today. War is terrible, and I hope nobody ever has to do it again. But at the same time, the military really does offer, for a kid like me that was going the wrong direction. I wish my story was more patriotic, but literally, it was to stay out of jail and
Yeah.
redirect my life in a different trajectory.
Well, kudos to you for seizing that opportunity in that way. I think that says a lot about you, your character, and your resiliency. So that's just, I think that's wonderful, wonderful. And thank you for your service. Yeah, not everyone goes for righteous reasons, right? But even
Yeah.
still, it doesn't matter.
Hey,
It's still a sacrifice. It's still you know But to hear you say that it was the best and the worst is just so fascinating. I find that to be true with so many of our most difficult challenging experiences in life. They're incredibly painful, but then they're also just incredibly rewarding at the same time. So, cool. Well, how did you two meet? I got to know. How did you guys come together?
I
Hannah,
tricked
what's
her
that
into
story like? You
it.
tricked her? Did
Yeah.
you did you walk into the pawn shop too?
No,
No,
we didn't like each other at first,
no, we did.
and probably for a
Ooh.
while.
Yeah, yeah. I thought she was a
That's
stuck-up goody two-shoes. Yeah,
Thought he was egotistical and full of himself.
and I
oh.
was.
Sounds like a match made in heaven. Sounds
Yeah.
like perfect fodder for a romantic comedy, right?
Comedy, yeah.
That's great.
So my roommate had a huge crush on Hannah,
Mhm.
and he was afraid to ask her out. And so he was constantly trying to get me roped into somehow inviting Hannah on different things that we were going to.
Mhm.
And so one of them was a camping trip, and so Hannah, she didn't want to go camping with a bunch of guys out in the middle of the woods. It's probably not safe. But but there was another couple that were going, so she was going to stay with in their campsite, and we were going to all have fun out there. Well, the whole weekend, her and I ended up spending time together and talking and getting to know each other,
Mm.
and so I we went to an area of the reservoir where there was a big cliff, and we were all jumping off into the water, and I was laughing. I told my roommate, I'm like, that girl's never done anything adventurous in her life. Imagine if she even gets in the boat. And so I took the boat around the cliff to make sure it was deep enough, and she looked at me and she goes, well, if I don't like it that high, can I jump from a lower section? And I was like, yeah, whatever, just get up there. And so we hiked up there, and she's like, all right, I want to jump from a lower section. I said, no. I said, I know how deep it is here. This is where you jump from. And she's like, so you lied to me. I was like, yeah, whatever. So she jumped, and
I told him I would jump,
yeah,
so I was gonna jump.
Mhm.
You didn't think I would.
I didn't think she was going to. I was like, I got to hike all the way back down with her. And
And
so,
that's when you knew, right?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, she jumped, and I was like, all right, maybe there's more to her than meets the eye. And so
Hmm.
we hung out.
We hung out the next 2 weeks. Then he asked me out, and then 3 months later he proposed. And then 6
Wow.
months after that we were married. So
Wow. And how many years have you been married now?
we just celebrated 14.
Wow,
Thank you.
congratulations. That's
But we're very honest.
amazing.
The first year was horrible.
It was terrible.
So
That's not uncommon. You
no,
know, that's pretty common. You're just getting used to each other and figuring it out and all of that.
Well,
That's amazing.
we were looking at all these other people running around having this honeymoon year, and we looked at each other and we're like, still don't know if I like you or not. And so it was,
So what
but we got it out of the way in the beginning.
yeah. We mostly like each other now
very
all the
Yeah.
nice.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can totally tell just the chemistry that you have together, that you guys are just like a fierce team together. And you've been through a lot over the last 14 years.
Mhm.
A lot. Let's talk about that. I know you have some history, Kevin. You came back from Iraq and you were
Mhm.
injured, I believe, right?
Yeah, I was injured
And
overseas.
then yep, and then you had the serial entrepreneurial bug, it sounds like. Is that when you started the pawn shop? Or
So,
what?
no,
Tell
I
me
was flying
more.
helicopter. I came back. I used my
That's
GI
right.
Bill, and I became a
Mhm.
helicopter pilot. And I was flying helicopters. I had a really unique ability or opportunity. I right out of school, I got picked up by a firefighting company, and then based off of my military background, I was able to work for a company called Evergreen, and we
Mhm.
worked around the world.
Mhm.
That's when, on the way back from one of my trips, I met Hannah, and Hannah and I had gotten right as Hannah and I had gotten married. I was supposed to be going to the Gulf Coast and flying oil, and
Mm.
the BP oil spill had just happened, and they had laid off all the pilots. And so now I
Mm.
have a brand new wife and no job. So I looked at it and said, we can sit here and wait and possibly go broke, or I can buy this pawn shop. And
Mm.
so we bought the pawn shop, and it had been mismanaged. It was in horrible shape. And so I went in there. I understood firearms really well. I taught myself how to buy gold and diamonds and silver. And I went in, remodeled it, and turned it into a sporting goods store that does pawns. And so my first investor pitch I had with it, I got to the end of the pitch, and the guy looked at me and said, "That is the most irritating thing I've ever heard in my entire life." And I looked at him, and one of the things the military taught me is how to have a thick skin. And so I looked at him and I said, "Why is it so irritating?" He's like, "Well, it's mainly just you." And so I said, "Well, okay." I said, "If you're going to give me that kind of feedback, then we're going to sit here and figure out what it is about me that is irritating in a pitch." And so we sat there and we redid the entire pitch together. And as he talked to me, he's like, "You should have mentioned that. You should have done this. You should have done this." And so he just brutalized me for over 3 days on how to give pitches and how to not be irritating. And so he ended up not investing, but I ended up pitching it to another guy who became a very close friend of ours. And when I took that pitch to him, he bought the first time. He said, "Yes, I'll give you the money, Kevin. Let's move forward." And so we were able to move forward. Funny thing is the guy who told me I was irritating, I've pitched over 15 times to him. And the greatest compliment I ever got from him was at the end. He said, "Congratulations, Kevin. You're not as near as irritating as you used to be." And so
Wow.
he's still an advisor. He's still a confidant. I mean, I still run things past him because he's just brutally honest. But it was really interesting to have someone who just had no care for my personal feelings, but had every care for my success.
That is such a great no care for your personal feelings, but every care for your personal success. As entrepreneurs, as business owners, to be able to know the difference and you recognize that and leaned into it, it takes a lot of humility and discernment to be able to understand that and know that those are two very different things, you know?
Yes.
So that is really cool. And the fact that you have a great relationship with him now. I mean, so many people would have taken that feedback and would have just gotten offended and defensive, right?
Oh,
And
I was
you
very offended. And I'm he's an older guy. I'm looking at this guy going, "Man, I could drag you out your own backyard and hurt you for what you just said." But then it just
Mhm.
clicked in my head. I was like, you know what? He hasn't thrown me out. Like, he could tell me to leave, and he hasn't told me to leave. So until he tells me to leave, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to get the information he has.
I think that's a really good point that you make, that sometimes we are going to get offended, but it's important that you still, even if you get offended, look for the opportunity, look for what you can
Mhm.
learn from the experience. Wow, that's fascinating. So you had many, many pitches with him.
I have pitched to him a lot, and it's got to the point now where if I'm looking at doing something else, I'll call him up and I'll say, "Hey, Ron, do you have a couple minutes?" And "Well, what are we doing?" I'm like, "I'm gonna irritate the crap out of you." And he's like, "All right, let's go." And so,
Man.
and it's like I said, I've pitched to him a couple things, and the thing is when you're doing pitches, you have to know your audience.
Yeah.
He could invest in anything I did, and I could easily. It's not about the funds; it's about having the right partnership. And the
Mhm.
partnership I have with him, he gives me so much more valuable things than funds because he tells me exactly where I'm wrong and he
Mm.
argues with me. And I do need people in my life that argue with me, that I can argue back with, and we can come to a best idea.
So true. I call that the challenger. I think every entrepreneur needs four people in their life. They need a cheerleader, a challenger, a coach, and a mentor. And like those challengers, you got to hold on tight to them because
Yeah.
they're going to help you. They're going to help you get better. And so I think that's really beautiful. In my life, that's my husband. Same thing. He is totally my challenger. I'll come to him with an idea and he'll tell me all the reasons why it's not going to work. And I get so mad. I'm like, that's not what I want to hear. You just don't get it. And then I step back and I think about it and I'm like, he's so right. And then it's really a great thing because then it helps me refine whatever the idea is. And then I'm like, okay. And then it just ends up better. So that's really cool. So tell me a little bit about, I know this, we all went through this crazy experience several years ago with COVID, and it feels now like a very distant memory, like thankfully, right?
You can't
But
get
I
away
know
from
you guys had a, oh, yeah, right. I know you guys went through quite a difficult time during that time. Would you be comfortable talking a little bit about that or?
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it started out,
cool.
we were at a church camp out, and we've been camping with some friends, and one of the friends called us back and said, "Hey, I just popped hot for COVID," and all the
Mm,
data I had seen on it the elderly and the really young were the main people they were worried about. So, and I'd been sick before. I didn't think much of it. So, isolated myself, quarantined myself to the back of the house, and food and water, just kind of trying to keep things down. Well, I friends called and checked on me, and my comment, and I have kind of a different sense of humor, but I told them, I said, I've had worse hangovers. Like, I'll get over this. Don't worry about it. Well, it one night just turned bad, and it turned real bad,
mm,
and I was having a hard time breathing. So I told Hannah, I said, probably should go to the hospital. And so we went down to the ER, and I figured it was going to be an in and out kind of deal. Went into the ER. I They tested my oxygen. They said, we're going to keep you. And
mm,
from there, I continued to decline. And Hannah couldn't come see me. We were interacting over the phone. I used to put my phone
mm,
on speaker, and Hannah would keep it on speaker at the house just so I could hear the sounds of the house and the kids running around and
mm,
everything that was going on. Just kind of kept me centered into and kept a similar thing. One of the trainings you go through in the military is how to be isolated or how to be in situations that are less than ideal. And so what what I learned in those is to find something that is a normal, whether it's in your head or it's just hold on to something. And so I would just put my phone on speaker, and she'd leave hers on speaker, and I'd just hear the sounds of the house, kids running around, her making breakfast, doing things, yelling at the kids fighting, whatever it is. And so we went through a week, and when I first got there, there was some really rough times. They call it a code blue, but it's when you stop breathing. I'd stopped breathing
mm.
at least once and blacked out, and then I got cleared of COVID. They used a remdesivir protocol on me, um, uh,
Mhm.
and people go back and forth on that. You know, it cleared up the COVID, but it caused my immune system to drop so much that I ended up with a bacterial pneumonia, and
Oh, wow.
that proceeded and got more aggressive and more aggressive, and um, that's what sent me back down. But so I got cleared of COVID. Hannah was able to come back into the hospital once I was cleared, and then
Mhm.
it just got really aggressive from there.
So the
Go ahead.
first week that he was in ICU, but he was able to
Mhm.
maintain his breathing and was moved out of the ICU. And so we were really blessed that when they moved him out of the ICU and the kids and I had our 10-day of quarantine, then I could go in there with him. So I was in the
Mm.
hospital
Yeah.
with him for that first week or the second week that he was out of the ICU. But yeah, the bacterial pneumonia. And then he also had pulmonary embolism. So he
Oh
ended
yeah.
up with 2 blood
Oh
clots in
my
his lung.
gosh. Wow.
And so
Yeah.
as
That's
that
serious.
week progressed, yeah, it wasn't getting better. And he was really, really
Mhm.
fighting hard, but they just said your body is so exhausted. So they'd got it cleared for me to be able to stay with him more. But then one evening he was getting up and moving and he just completely lost it and they couldn't get enough oxygen to him. So they ended up rushing him back down to the ICU. And so that night, the doctor and I talked about the need of a ventilator. We had talked about it the
Mhm.
entire time he was there. Um, and actually, they were
Yeah.
really just trying to get people to go on ventilators before their bodies were so tired to fight it. But we'd gotten to the point
Yeah.
where he fought as much as he could, and we went in and I prayed with him about it, and we just said, if he needs to do it, do it. So about 3 o'clock that morning, he ended up that he started to go under again. So they put um, did an emergency procedure and put him on a ventilator. So he was on a ventilator for 8 days, and
Wow.
at the next morning when I came back in, the doctor had told me like he's the worst of the worst. I was the first one they met with because he had it the worst. The machines were maxed out. They were looking at maybe shipping him to Seattle or Portland to do ECMO treatments, but the doctor was pretty
Wow.
honest that there's not a lot of beds or availability and getting him there. So that first day was pretty rough, just not knowing what was going to happen. Um, and then it was definitely touch and go for 8 days. I mean, there was days he would progress, and then I was super excited. We were praying, everybody's praying, but the staff was
Mhm.
like, "Well, we've seen this," and then it plateaus, and then it goes bad again, and so it was emotionally just a lot of ups and downs. And he slowly made progress, and then he would plateau. Had a day that was pretty rough, um, and then just slowly started to get better. But the longer you're on a ventilator, it worries them because your body's just not doing the things it needs to do on its own. So they'd actually talked about putting a trach in him, and that was kind of like a baby step to get him off the ventilator. So the
Mhm.
the seventh night, the nurse had come in and they had done can't remember what it's called, but they would wake him up just to see if he could breathe. And so I would be there with him, but then they'd put him back under after a couple hours. But he still had the ventilator, everything in, and which was really hard for him because he couldn't move. He was sedated, but he had this machine in breathing for him. So that night, they'd started to put him back on his medications, and the new nurse came in and was talking to me and the outgoing nurse, and was like, "Okay, so do we have plans tomorrow to put the trach in him?" And Kevin was lucid enough to be like, like he was like grunting, and I was like, he doesn't know about that. Like, let's just. I don't think they've made any set plans, but they were planning on doing it that morning. Anyways, who knows what got into him, but yeah, they'd already started the sedation and all the medications. And I was getting ready to leave. So I left and I didn't even get outside of out of the ICU. And I told the nurse I'm leaving because they usually go tie him down. And we joked, oh, he doesn't even have the energy to move his arm. And I didn't even get out of the ICU and he pulled his ventilator out.
Oh
So
my goodness.
So luckily, or I guess they didn't
So
tell me about it. So I got home before I got the phone call.
the next thing
Wow.
Yep.
the first memory I had was this nurse standing over the top of me, and they're trying to hold my arms down and they're trying to get something out of my mouth. And I think they're attacking me. And so I'm trying to attack them back. And
Wow.
so this struggle ensues, and I'm a horrible patient. I don't
Yes.
like being told what to do. I don't want to comply with anything. And I don't like people touching me. And so I'm fighting them on everything. And so they finally got me calmed back down. And um, yeah. And so we had amazing nurses. I can't say enough good about the nurses we had, and doctors. They were awesome.
Mhm.
But they, so they got me kind of calmed back down, and they woke me up the next day, and I was sitting there with this doctor, and he said, Mr. Thompson, you're the hardest person I've ever had to medicate. And I said, well, what do you mean?
Wow.
Sedate, the
Yeah.
hardest one to sedate.
He said, every time I'd turn your sedation up, you'd fight me. You'd wiggle your finger, you'd wiggle your toes, you'd try to move something. He's like, so I'd turn it
Wow.
up again and you'd fight me again. He goes, you fought me this entire time. Every time. He's like, I would go to my office and just go, I'm trying to help this guy. Why is he fighting me? And
There was at a point I got a nurse because he was moving his eyebrows. Like, I mean, he's sedated and he's, what's the other medication, but like
yeah,
completely not even supposed to be able to move. And he's moving his eyebrows. So I had to go get them and like, I don't think this is normal. That was like on day 5 or 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it was really touch and go that night because they're like, if he goes back, if he recesses, we've got to do another emergency ventilator procedure. So, but yeah, he was raring to go the next day. He was sitting up. I mean, he had no strength. Like he couldn't even put the spoon
Mhm.
up to his mouth by himself. We had to
I
help
thought
him.
I was amazing.
Yes. We had to remind him that often, like you're not mentally and physically are two completely different things. But yeah, he just charged out.
Yeah.
And so I think within 2 days of coming off the ventilator, he was out of the ICU. And then within a week's
Wow.
time, we just kept moving up floors and he was released to go. I would not say he was ready physically to come home when he did, but like emotionally, I mean, he'd been in there 32 days by the time
Oh
we
my
we
goodness.
came home. And so he came home on oxygen 100% of the
Yeah.
time. Doctor's appointments. He could barely walk from his recliner to the restroom.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah,
So they told me when I came home, they said you need to go home. You need to sit in your chair, and we'll just see if you'll get better. You'll probably never be off of oxygen. You're probably never going
Mm.
to progress much, but we can get. They make like adaptive things, like you can have an oxygen bottle on a cart. Like we'll reduce the amount of oxygen you need, but you'll probably never be off of oxygen. And so
Wow.
they kind of gave me this bleak outlook. And so I told him, I said, send me home. And I told Hannah, I said, call physical therapy, tell them I'll be in tomorrow morning. And she's like,
yeah.
how are we going to get you there? I said, we'll figure it out. Tell them I'm
Yeah.
coming.
We walked in
And
the door and they were looking at me and looking at him like he barely looks like he's alive. I'm like, I know, we're here. So all he could
Wow.
do is, I mean, really,
Such a fighter.
yeah, realistically, he could walk back to the treadmill, stand on it, and walk back.
yeah,
But
so the guy who
you
owns
don't
a,
tell Kevin no.
Yeah. It's
so the guy,
almost like you want to be told no, Kevin. You want to be told no so you can prove that you can do it,
Yeah.
right?
you know what? So we have a company mantra and it's, tell me what's impossible. I'll show you the limits of your capabilities.
Oh, tell me what's impossible. I'll show you the limits of your capabilities. That is so inspiring.
So when they told me that I couldn't do this, the physical therapist is a veteran, and I called him. I
Mhm.
said, Keith, I'm coming, and Keith's like, all right. And so I'm sitting in there. The whole staff is staring at me like, and Keith comes over and he goes, Kevin, you got to walk across the room. If you can walk across the room, I'll start working with you. And when you're so low on oxygen, all your muscles feel like they're on fire. You hurt, like it's painful. And
Mm.
I walked across the room and he's like, okay, well, let's get a wheelchair. And I said, no. I said, if I got over here, I'll get back. And so the young lady who was helping me, the physical therapist assistant, her husband, there's a lot of veterans in Alaska. Her husband was just getting out of the army. And she kind of laughed and she's like,
Mhm.
that's exactly how my husband is. And so I walked back. We got in the car. We almost ran out of oxygen on the way home.
Mhm.
Um, but it
Wow.
wasn't, quit wasn't an option.
Quit wasn't an option.
Yeah.
It seems like that whole experience just galvanized you to be able to, you know, kind of move forward in a new direction and um, kind of, I mean, that's incredible.
I think
I
it
mean,
showed
how
our
long was your?
As I
Yeah,
say,
go
I
ahead.
just think it showed our family what we were capable of. Like it just became a time,
Yeah.
and the healing process. We just stayed home. I homeschool our kids, and so it was just we were home. We were getting dad to appointments. We were homeschooling at physical therapy, at doctor's appointments. They saw dad just like working through, like just keep going. And so I think as a family, it really just showed us what we are capable of. And yeah.
Well, and
Mm,
I am incredibly lucky. There's not a lot of guys out there that have a wife who you go down on a
mm,
ventilator and runs your entire family. That's why I put in the email when you and I talked, like, if you want to talk to the real strength behind the relationship, like, I went
mm,
completely offline and our house ran like through a amount of stress that she had no ability to train for, no ability to really plan for. Just be able to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep moving. Like there's not there. I don't. I'm incredibly lucky to have the wife that I do. I'm incredibly
mm.
lucky to have best friend and partner in life that I know I can count on, even in the worst situations.
My gosh, you're giving me the goosebumps. That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh. What a powerful, powerful relationship the two of you have. And what a wonderful just to go through that together and to be able to see you both, you know, be so resilient in that way that you could rely on each other. I mean, that is truly s- what's so great about a wonderful partnership and marriage that way. That's amazing.
Well, and
Man,
it's
and look
really
at you.
cool in
Yeah.
in a partnership like we've been able to share is
Mhm,
I have strengths that Hannah doesn't have, and Hannah has a lot of
mhm,
strengths that I don't have. And so we're able to understand where the other person fills in. And
mhm,
so there's so many times where I'm beating my head against the wall and Hannah can step in and say, "Hey, this is where you need to be." And it makes sense. And there's other times
mhm,
where Hannah's looking at a situation and I see things from more of a long term standpoint. And I say, hey, if we just tweak this a little bit, we'll be better. And so just being
mhm.
able to play off each other's strengths is makes us so much more effective.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just had a really wonderful conversation with a consultant yesterday actually, and he was talking about business partnerships, which I think are, and he was saying that, yes, most business partnerships don't end well. But if you really want to build an extremely successful enterprise, if you look at most of the extremely successful enterprises out there, they're usually like majority of the time partnerships. And it's because you can really, you be able to gain strength from each other and rely on each other. And you have, double the mental, emotional, physical energy to be
Oh
able to handle, and so I think that's what's so great about like marriages and family and business partnerships is that yes, at times they can be challenging, but in a beautiful way, in a way that can help. But it even sounds like your partnership isn't even challenging. You guys are just like
Oh no.
yeah.
Oh no. Uh,
oh man.
Our house gets loud at times.
it does.
Okay, so you're like you're normal then. You're not like this
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
know. Yeah.
Your strengths
yeah.
can also be your greatest weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
Your strengths can also be your greatest weaknesses. Isn't that the truth? It
Yeah.
is so true. Yeah, absolutely. So true. So
And I
tell us
gotta
a little bit
You gotta
about,
go.
oh yeah,
I
go
gotta go
ahead.
put on
Go
mom
ahead.
hat. So thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hannah, it was so nice to meet you.
You
Thank you for
too.
sharing your story. So let's talk about like what led you to AK Mountain Dog. So you're through your recovery. Like, what was it that led you to build this company? What made you
so
want to take the leap there?
So Hannah's been on this health kick and
Mhm.
trying to make me healthier. And I resisted every moment. So whether it's like eliminating sugar and going to monk fruit, doing all these other things, like she's always trying to make me healthier. And so
Yeah.
I had been buying Mountain House freeze dried backpacker meals. And when I go deep into the woods, we do go really far in on our moose hunts and our bear hunts and our caribou hunts, and even fishing trips. It's not
Mm-hmm.
uncommon for us to be over 100 miles from the nearest road. And
Mm-hmm.
so we take food with us. Well, she was reading the ingredients. She kept telling me how they're bad for me. And I was like, well, there's no real better option right now. So she went and bought a harvest rate freeze dryer and she started freeze drying meals and putting them
Mm.
in packages. So it was just for our personal consumption. Well,
Right.
after our after what happened, I was looking to just I kind of went into scramble mode. Like, how can I make some money
Mm.
for our family
Yeah.
and keep us going? And so I knew some people who had some really high end dogs who were feeding the raw diet, and I knew from I've always kind of tracked with animal nutrition and different fads in animal nutrition. And so this raw diet it was beyond the phase of being a fad, and it was becoming a mainstay. Well, one of the big problems with the raw diet is the amount of freezer space that is required for a for you to truly feed the raw diet. And so,
Mm.
talking to a friend, I told him, I was like, my wife's got this freeze dryer. We can freeze dry all that food, eliminate the freezer, and then you can just throw it on the shelf, add water, and
Oh.
there you go. And so we tried it out, and he's like, this is amazing. So
Mm.
I saw that, okay, so there was a market, but I live in Alaska. Shipping's hard. All this other stuff's hard. I talked to a farmer, and we were looking at food prices and some other things. And the farmer made a comment to me. He's like, I can grind a pig from snout to tail, use the entire pig, and make twice what I can sell it to humans for. And I was like,
Fascinating.
there's no way. And he's like, yeah, guts and all. He goes, I make more money in dog food. And so
Wow.
I looked at it, and I was looking at protein sources, and there's been an issue with more dogs are becoming allergic to chicken. So they're looking for a replacement protein. Well, salmon has always been very high end and expensive.
Yeah.
So we looked at, okay, how can we make this? We started out with a supplement and we started turning it into a supplement. Well, a friend of mine who's a veterinarian said the supplement market is, you can claim anything. There's no regulation on it, and people are highly wary of the supplement market. So he said, what the industry really needs is a solid treat somebody can give their dog that isn't
Mm.
full of a bunch of junk. The most of the pet treats on the market today are owned by candy companies, or and the other one's General Mills. So Mars owns
Interesting.
a majority of like the bag and strips and all, those type of pet
Yeah.
treats. And nothing against Mars, I love their candy, but like, that's who owns those, and so that culture of building things is going into those. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like there's been a lot of cottage type pet treats that came out that had a hard time keeping up with demand. And so what I saw was I was sitting on top of the most valued resource in pet food, which is salmon, wild caught Alaskan salmon. There's farm salmon that I have no problem saying nobody should eat. You shouldn't feed it to your dogs. It's destroying the ocean. It's destroying.
Mhm.
They feed it antibiotics. The reason it's the color pink that it is because they feed them dye, and that's how they can. So if you see Atlantic-based salmon, anything that says organic salmon, our salmon can't be organic because it's wild caught. It has to be farmed in order to be organic. So a
Mm.
lot of that organic salmon and those type of things, their branding and marketing avenues that I mean, I'm not here to tell anybody how to do business, but we don't use that stuff. And
Yeah.
getting our message out about wild caught Alaskan salmon in a sustainable model like the Alaska fishery has, that's where we win. And on
Yeah,
top of
absolutely.
it, so in order for we use a portion of the salmon that is actually perfectly good and used to have a market. It used to have a huge market, but the market dropped off. So they started just grinding it up and pumping it back into the ocean because they can't use it and they can't just store it for storage. So I knew one of the guys who owned the canneries. And so I proposed an idea to him. He gave me a good deal on a bunch of it, gave it to me for free. And so
Wow.
I went and I started making these little fish treats. Well, the problem is when you freeze dry salmon, it falls apart and turns to dust. So we had to
Oh,
figure out how to make it stay in a fish shape.
yeah.
And so we ground it up, got it all put together. So I went and I invented the mold machine that causes
Oh,
the salmon to stay in a fish shape and be a crisp little treat without cooking, without adding additives or preservatives. We have a solid little fish treat that people can give their dog.
that is incredible. Just the what I hear from that story, many things I think that really like hit me is, well, obviously innovation, but resourcefulness. And it almost was kind of like a happy accident a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Like you weren't intentionally wanting to create a dog treat. It was like your wife was wanting you to eat healthier, and so it's kind of like you were just organically living your life and your creative wheels were spinning and you were thinking like, well, what can I do here? And you were thinking very entrepreneurial to say, like, how can I make money at this? Where's the market for this product? And where's the opportunity? And the resourcefulness of being able to ask for help from all the people that you did and the connections that you had to be able to figure out what's going to be how you can use the product, where you can get access to it, and to be able to leverage those connections is just a masterclass in entrepreneurship. It's like taking advantage of those happy accidents and looking for opportunity in just your everyday, what you're doing, and trying to see like, could this be solving a problem here? How could this be solving a problem? And then, really talking to people and asking and getting feedback and understanding exactly how it can be used and thinking like, "What's the best way for me to make money here?" So,
Well,
what
and
a
that's the
cool.
thing is we I tell people like when you enter into this crazy life of entrepreneurship, like
Mhm.
if you
And it
can't,
is crazy.
it is, it is. It's absolutely crazy. Um, I I I have a lot of companies that I really enjoy watching. And I benchmark off of things that they do that is successful and things that I think I can incorporate and kind of make. But I don't. You have to have that internal motivation that just drives you to see problems, see solutions. So many times, I think what we get lost in is we see a problem and we look for whose fault it is. Um,
Yes.
I drive, and we just had a huge company meeting about this
Mhm.
3 weeks ago because that started creeping into the culture of our company, and we have a no blame policy in our company. I don't care whose fault it is. I want
Yep.
to know why the system didn't work.
Amen.
So
Exactly.
if we get to
It's
the
not the
end.
people, it's the process.
Exactly. So if I get to the
Mhm.
end and something didn't happen, well, the instructions weren't followed. Why weren't the instructions followed?
Exactly.
Well, are they not
Yep.
clear enough? Are they not like we so let's go and examine every point. Sometimes you get to the end and it was, hey, the person was not having a good day. Or sometimes that's not
Mhm.
the right person for that position. Um,
Exactly. Which falls on the entrepreneur. Means
oh yeah.
you put the wrong person in the bus and you gotta find another,
Yeah.
that's
I love Jim Collins' Good to Great. and
yes.
and building level 5 systems.
Mhm.
And so we really concentrate on that within our company. We had a young man who wasn't working out, and I sat down with him. I said, "Hey, look, it's no secret you're not working out here. So what's your passion? Where do you want to go?" And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, what do you want to do with your life?" And he's like,
Mhm.
"Well, I want to be a baker." I'm like, "All right, I know some bakers. Let's give them a call."
Oh.
And he's like, really? He's like, this is the best way I've ever been fired. I'm like, I'm not firing you. Like, I just want you to see, I want you to reach your potential. Your potential
Yeah.
doesn't look like it's going to happen at this company. So go reach your potential and I'll find somebody else. Like the
Mhm.
process of getting the right people on the bus is the most important thing. And when the wrong person's on the bus,
Yes.
we need to help them go find their bus so that we can get the right people on ours.
I love that. It's leading with so much empathy, the way that you handled that situation. And what's great about that too is that you're setting a great example for the rest of the team to show that you're fair on both sides, you know? Like if they're doing well and they're performing well, you're going to reward them, but you're also, if there's a problem and it's recognized, you're not going to like tolerate it. You're going to find a solution. You're fair on both sides. You're going to find a way. I had a very similar situation where I had to have a hard conversation with a team member, same situation, that just there were things that weren't happening, expectations, etc. And I just was very clear and I said, yeah, these are the expectations we set and this is what needs to happen in order for this to work. That person self-selected.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't have to, it was amazing. Like they said, I this isn't a fit, and I didn't have to be the one to, they just, they realized and recognized it. So
Well,
that's
and
so
that's the
exciting.
thing is
So
that when you define what it looks like to be on the bus,
yeah.
people will quickly realize whether they fit or not. And it's not that
Yes.
they're better or worse. It's just that's not where
Right.
they belong. And the sooner we can find
Exactly.
that out, and the sooner they can find out where they belong, everybody's happy. And so
Exactly.
and even among you were talking about partners earlier. Like I have had to exit. I've had to exit some partners over the year, and it was difficult because it is very
Yeah.
much like a marriage, and exiting those partners can be rough. But at the same time, when you're when you're doing that, you have to do it from a standpoint of, this isn't a personal thing. This is, you don't fit on the bus.
Right. It's a
And
business decision.
yep.
You
And
have to do
so,
what's right for the business.
and as when
Mhm.
you have partners, my wife and I joke about our loud conversations in the house, but like partners have to have loud conversations. And uh,
Yes.
one of my partners is a retired Marine gunnery sergeant. And if you don't hear him and I have loud conversations as a former Army guy and a Marine, like there are some very loud conversations. But we have a different way of talking. We have a different way of relating to each other, and we have a different way of airing out
Yeah.
our issues.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we both know same team, same mission.
Yeah.
We want what's best for the company. And
Yeah, it's like the go ahead.
oh,
Mhm.
and then we have our CFO who is a numbers genius. He's a
Mm.
great guy. There's three of us that own the company, and he is hilarious. You couldn't find a more perfect opposite to what the other two partners are. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I met one of his old college roommates, and he's like, I don't think the guy wore shoes all the way through college. Like, he was a Grateful Dead head. And he's running around with an Army guy and a Marine. And I love Grateful Dead. I mean, they're great, but like, it's just the cultures are just different, but it fits so well together. Uh,
Mhm.
that like when he came on board, it was just like it was yeah, it was seamless. It was obvious he always should have been there.
Oh, isn't it that's so cool that you can feel that,
Oh
You
yeah,
feel when it's right. I've
and
experienced the same thing where you're just like, it's right. There's something about the relationship that just fits, even if it might have the moments where you're having those difficult conversations, right?
oh yeah,
And you come from completely different backgrounds, but something about it just fits and is right, and you just have to lean into it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and the
so
nice thing
cool.
is he understands that as CEO, I'm going to take the reins and I'm going to run as fast as I can,
Mhm.
and I'm a hard guy to slow down. but
Yes.
and he's comfortable with the tension between him and I, where he's like, "No, Kevin, we can't do this," and I
Yeah.
say, "But why?"
Yeah.
And
Good.
we get through millions of why conversations before we're like, okay, no, that's the plan. That's okay. Our marketing plan isn't right. Our demographic view isn't looking the same. So we can't run here. We have to do this first. Like, it's not that no, we can't. It's no, not right now.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so being able to do that, and that's where, when you were back to the beginning of our conversation, when you're talking about challengers and those, one of the most difficult thing as an entrepreneur is not to have what we call mission creep. We are so in tuned with ideas that are flowing out and market potentials and good ideas, like all those things. We have to have those people in our life that say, no, do one thing great.
Yes, it's so true. It is so true. You have to learn to say no. You have to learn, like, because you're so right, as entrepreneurs, you're just full of ideas and full of vision and full of what you want to do, but you have to have focus. You have to be focused. Otherwise, you're never going to accomplish any of it. And there has to
No.
be someone to help you focus in and have some grounding influence to be able to help you go and move in the direction that's going to make sense at that moment to help you get where you want to go.
Well, and I
Yeah.
laugh because people ask me, they're like, well, how did you come up with this company? What was your idea? How did you, I looked at what Black Rifle Coffee and their leadership did.
Hmm.
And I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, we looked at a lot of things that Evan and his team did over there. And there were some really cool things that they did through social media and a lot of those other avenues that we could use some of those pieces. And we're big in the military about following those who came before you, look at their successes and see if you could incorporate that in your model. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if you go through training, you learn about what we did in World War I, World War II, Korea,
Hmm.
Vietnam, and so on. And so we
Yeah.
learn, we build that. And so, very much the same way, when I saw what Black Rifle did, I was like, okay, we're not going to go that far with that community. We're going to be more, you know, white picket fence and golden retrievers. Um, but we can use a lot of the models that they used for success. And so we pulled from some of those.
Hmm.
Another one is a company I love. In fact, I'm wearing his hat. Bison Union. He's a coffee company, and he really embraced kind of the outdoor lifestyle.
Hmm.
So I'm constantly on his website. I order his coffee already. He's a great guy. But I'm looking at what he's doing because he's got some really cool ideas. And then I look at it between the two of those, and there's a couple other companies. I look at them, I'm like, okay, so here's where that's going in the coffee market. So how do I apply that to the dog market and still get
Mm.
that kind of success? Because they have such a loyal following, and they're able to build such a great customer experience that people keep coming back to them. Well, there's an equal fanaticism about dogs that there is about
Yes.
coffee. So,
So
how
true.
do I capture the imagination of these customers so that I can gain their loyalty and gain them? Number one, create the best product out there, and we do. We are the best
Yeah.
salmon treat on the market right now. There's nobody who does what we do. Number two, get your message out, and get your story out, get your message out of who you are and how you've come to be. And and then and then it's not the third, but it's probably one of the most important, was have phenomenal customer service. So at the end of the day, when a customer calls my company, they get greeted. We want to hear their stories. We want to hear about their dog. We want to
Mhm.
hear the things that worked, the things that didn't. I had a customer call me, and it irritated one of our team members, but he called me and he said that he weighed our treats and they were off by 3 grams.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, guys, why are we upset? And they're like, who is sitting around weighing our treats? I'm like, obviously this guy. And so I said, hey, thanks for the feedback. Here's our
Yes.
free bag of treats, and I wish you the best.
It's such great marketing. As a marketer,
Mhm.
everything you're saying is the key to really like marketing is about really understanding and listening to your customers better than anyone else and figuring out how you can solve their problems better than anyone else. The closer you can get to your customer and just be open and humble when they give you that feedback, as a company, you're going to be eons ahead of any competitor. You know, I had a client who told me once, he was like, should I be doing what my competitors are doing? You know, they're doing this. Should we be doing that? And I'm like, that is not the right question. You need to be asking, what is it that my customers need right now? Am I listening to them? Do I know and understand what their problems are better than anyone else? Who cares what your competitors are doing? If you are close to your competitors are all going to be chasing you, you know? So I love everything that you just said, those 3 points. And I think we should say them again. The first one you said is make a really great product. The second one is just be really good about getting your vision and your story out there. And the third is like really great customer service. I mean, those are absolutely like the great hallmarks of a just kick A brand. So I just like salute you and commend you for what you're building. And the product just seems so remarkable. I don't have a dog, but if I did, I'd be buying it. That's for sure. So this has been such a wonderful, amazing conversation. And I just love what you're building at AK Mountain Dog and what you're doing, Kevin. It's great stuff. I have like one question I'd love to ask you, and that
Okay.
is, as we close out our show today, what do you want to be known for? You've such an amazing history and story. If you think about your life and what you've been building and your family and everything, and let's just say, you know, you're on your deathbed 50 years from now, not on a ventilator.
Mhm.
You've lived a very full life. When you're sitting there and you're looking back on your life, what is it that you want to be known for? What do you want other people to say about you, and what's the legacy you want to create?
I want to be a good dad and a good husband.
Mm.
That's it. I mean, money comes and goes. Businesses are built and fall. They're bought and sold. Um, I got two great kids. I got an awesome wife, and yeah, I want people to say that guy. He was a good dad and he was a good husband.
I'm speechless, man.
I mean, that's what matters. Like we can go make all the money we want. It doesn't matter. Like if I'm not shooting bows in the backyard with my kid, like if my son's not on fire because he's running through doing judo. My daughter loves to go pick berries. She lives to ride on a four wheeler. She wants to do gymnastics, ballet, judo. Like that is my daughter. Like she's 100%. My son is my wife's, like his person. Yeah. But my daughter, she's running a million miles an hour and I love it.
Mm.
Like she has so much energy, so much creativity. She is just exploding onto the scene. And it's hilarious because she's like, well, Dad, these girls are doing this. And I'm like, okay, well, is that what you want to do? She's like, no, I want to go out in the woods. I want to go. I'm like, all right, then you go do that. Like, let's explore life. Like, you know, that's the kid side. I am the luckiest guy in the world. I got an awesome wife. And like we live in our own little world. Like we go on dates and it's our own little world. Like who cares what else anybody else is doing? Like we're goofing off. Like we laugh that we end up at Home Depot at most dates, like looking at pictures. Like we'll go to the movies, we go to dinner, and we end up at Home Depot. And so like
We end up at Costco. That's funny.
bingo. Yeah, see, we all have that end of the day. Like we don't have kids. What are we gonna do? And so like it's just like enjoying that time. Like I don't want. I mean, I don't want anything else. I want time. And that's why I didn't go chase back after aviation. That's why, I mean, I don't know a lot of people out there that get to like just hang out with their kids, like be a dad, be a husband, like go have fun. And And the more I concentrate on being a good dad and husband, the more successful I am in business. When we have our priorities right, we can we just see things differently.
Man, I have no words. I'm speechless. Wow, you literally brought me to tears. I think your just humility, and it just says a lot about you as a person. Those kids are lucky to have you as a dad, and your wife is certainly lucky to have you as a husband. And it's so refreshing to just be part of this, to know you, and an honor to be able to hear about just the person that you are and what you're building with your family and your commitment to them first of all and foremost. And I just am so honored to know you and have this conversation. It's been such a fun experience. And man, I wish you every success with your family, with your company, your kids, and everything. I wish there were more people like you in the world, Kevin. The world needs more. The world needs more people like you, fighters who just love their family and want to have an impact and do it the right way and do it for the right reasons. And so thank you for being an example in that way. Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me on. If there's
Yeah.
any encouragement I could give to anybody out there who has a little girl like I do, or a son, or the entrepreneurship is like a battle, and we have to walk out of the house and we've got to do the battle and be the big
Mhm.
scary marketing guy or whatever you need to be at the time. But then you got to walk back in the house, put on the pink boa, and have the tea party. Like that's how that's you got to get that mindset. And once you get that mindset, like you're
Mm,
good to go. Like and I work on it. It's nothing that you arrive at. It's something you work at every day.
yeah.
And I just thank you for giving us this opportunity. Like I
Mhm.
really enjoy sharing our story. I enjoy sharing how we came about, and if it helps anybody, then great. And if it doesn't, then it's still our story. We had a blast making it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's definitely it's an exciting story, and you're still building it. That's what's cool. It's
Oh yeah.
it's never done, right?
Oh yeah. No.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. This has been so much fun. I just, you know, laughed, I've cried, man, sheesh. Anyway, as we wrap up this episode of Tales of Misadventure, we are reminded that with entrepreneurship, there's no straight path to success. It's the unexpected twists and turns that shape our stories and make them worth telling. So embrace the misadventures in your own life and let them guide you towards your own blessings. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back soon with more captivating tales of misadventure.
Tales of Misadventure is produced, edited, and moderated by Julie Basello with Basello Media. Music by Marcus Way. Special thanks to our amazing guests and the entire DMG Digital team. Visit us at dmgdigital.io to get access to all our podcast interviews and other helpful resources. And if you'd like to get updates on the latest and greatest, please sign up for our email newsletter. We'll see you next time for another episode of Tales of Misadventure. Until then, keep falling forward.